Released in 1964, Goldfinger wasn't just another James Bond movie, it was the film that defined the franchise. From the unforgettable Aston Martin DB5 to the legendary line, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die," this classic set the gold standard for spy thrillers. But how much do you really know about Goldfinger? From behind-the-scenes drama to hidden details and near disasters, here are 15 things you never knew about one of the greatest Bond films of all time. Few cars in cinema history are as legendary as the Aston Martin DB5, which made its unforgettable debut in Goldfinger. Sleek, stylish, and packed with hidden gadgets, it quickly became James Bond's most iconic vehicle. Equipped by Q Branch with an arsenal of modifications, including retractable machine guns, tire slashers, and the now famous ejector seat, the DB5 was as deadly as it was elegant. However, the legendary ejector seat wasn't actually functional. To create the illusion, the filmmakers used a combination of a dummy, compressed air, and clever editing. Despite this, the DB5 captured the imagination of audiences, cementing its place in pop culture. It wasn't just a prop, it became a symbol of Bond's cool, sophisticated persona. Over the years, the DB5's fame only grew. The car reappeared in multiple Bond films, from Thunderball to Skyfall, solidifying its status as the ultimate spy vehicle. In 2010, the original Aston Martin used in Goldfinger was auctioned off for an astonishing $4.6 million, proving that even decades later, the DB5 remains as timeless as James Bond himself. James Bond may have had plenty of enemies, but one of his most amusingly exasperated critics came from within MI6 itself, Q, the genius behind Bond's gadgets. While Desmond Llewellyn had previously portrayed Q in From Russia with Love, it was Goldfinger that truly established their unforgettable chemistry. Originally, Llewellyn intended to play Q with deference, standing when Bond entered the room. However, director Guy Hamilton had a different vision. He told Llewellyn, "You hate this guy. He takes your inventions, never listens to instructions, and inevitably destroys them. To you, Bond is a reckless menace." This simple change transformed Q from just another background character into one of the franchise's most beloved figures. From that moment on, Q's exasperation with Bond became a defining element of their relationship. Whether scolding 007 for his carelessness or reluctantly handing over new gadgets, Llewellyn's portrayal made Q an irreplaceable part of the Bond legacy. Their dynamic, part frustration, part reluctant admiration, added humor and warmth to the series, making every Q scene a highlight for fans. Gert Fröbe delivered an unforgettable performance as the cunning and ruthless Auric Goldfinger, but what audiences heard on screen wasn't actually his voice. Due to his thick German accent, filmmakers decided to dub his dialogue with British actor Michael Collins to ensure clarity for English-speaking audiences. Despite this, Fröbe's towering presence and expressive acting brought the character to life. His commanding demeanor, chilling smirks, and calculated arrogance made Goldfinger one of the most iconic villains in Bond history. Even without his real voice, Fröbe's performance was so powerful that many fans never even noticed the dubbing. Ironically, when Goldfinger was released in Germany, Fröbe's original voice was restored, making it the only version where audiences could hear him in his own words. Regardless of the language, his portrayal of Goldfinger remains one of the most celebrated in the Bond franchise, proving that sometimes, a great performance speaks louder than words. Ian Fleming's original novel Goldfinger featured an ambitious but highly impractical heist. Auric Goldfinger planned to steal the entire gold supply from Fort Knox. While thrilling on paper, this plot posed a major challenge for the film's screenwriters. Logistically, moving thousands of tons of gold out of one of the most secure locations in the world was simply unrealistic, even for a Bond villain. To keep the Fort Knox setting while making Goldfinger's scheme more plausible, the writers devised a new plan. Instead of stealing the gold, Goldfinger would detonate a dirty bomb inside the vault. This would irradiate the U.S. gold reserves, rendering them useless and skyrocketing the value of his own private stockpile. It was a brilliant twist, easier to execute, more sinister in intent, and a perfect fit for the Cold War paranoia of the era. This change not only made the plot more believable but also elevated Goldfinger's villainy. He wasn't just a thief, He was a mastermind willing to destroy an entire economy for personal gain, making him one of Bond's most formidable foes. When it came to casting Pussy Galore, the confident and capable leader of an all-female flying squad, director Guy Hamilton knew he needed an actress who could match James Bond's charisma and physicality. His choice? Honor Blackman, who was already a household name thanks to her role as Kathy Gale in the hit spy series The Avengers. Blackman wasn't just an actress, she was trained in Judo, a skill she had honed during her time on The Avengers. This made her a perfect fit for Pussy Galore, a character who was more than just another Bond girl. She was a formidable opponent, even able to throw Bond off balance in a fight. Her ability to perform her own action scenes added authenticity to the role, making her one of the most memorable and respected female characters in the franchise. Blackman's casting proved to be a brilliant decision. Her strength, wit, and undeniable screen presence made Pussy Galore stand out in Goldfinger, cementing her as one of the most iconic women in Bond history. Even by James Bond standards, the name Pussy Galore was bold, perhaps too bold for 1960s audiences. The suggestive nature of the name immediately raised concerns with censors, especially in the United States. The American Ratings Board objected, insisting that the name be changed before the film could be released. Faced with this challenge, producer Albert R. Broccoli came up with a clever strategy. Instead of arguing, he simply presented the censors with a British newspaper featuring a widely circulated photo of Honor Blackman alongside Prince Philip. The headline? The Prince and the Pussy. Since the name had already appeared in mainstream media without controversy, Broccoli successfully convinced the board that it was acceptable for the film. Thanks to this unconventional tactic, Pussy Galore's name remained intact, and the character became one of the most memorable in Bond history. The controversy only added to her mystique, ensuring that Goldfinger would push boundaries, not just with its action, but with its fearless approach to storytelling. Fort Knox, one of the most secure locations in the world, was the centerpiece of Goldfinger's climax. However, the filmmakers faced a major challenge: they were never granted access to the facility. Not only were they prohibited from filming inside, but they couldn't even obtain reference photographs of the interior. With no real-world visuals to rely on, the production team had to create their own version of Fort Knox from scratch. Production designer Ken Adam took creative liberties, designing a cavernous, high-tech gold vault that looked more suited to a futuristic heist than a real-life repository. The result was visually stunning, adding to the film's grand spectacle. Ironically, the set was so convincing that many American viewers believed the filmmakers had somehow gained access to the real Fort Knox. The U.S. government even received complaints from citizens outraged that British filmmakers had been allowed inside a location so heavily guarded that even the president couldn't casually visit. In reality, Goldfinger's Fort Knox was pure Hollywood magic, an illusion so effective that it fooled audiences around the world. One of the most suspenseful moments in Goldfinger is the scene where James Bond finds himself strapped to a table as a deadly laser beam slowly inches toward him. The tension is palpable, but what audiences didn't know was that the iconic laser was pure Hollywood trickery. The filmmakers initially acquired a real industrial laser, hoping to capture its cutting power on camera. However, once the set was fully lit, they ran into a major problem: the beam was completely invisible. To solve this, the special effects team had to get creative. 2 technicians were placed underneath the table, one shined a light to mimic the laser's glow, while the other used a cutting torch to burn through the metal, creating the illusion of a powerful, precise beam slicing through Bond's restraints. Sean Connery, fully aware of the practical effects being used, had every reason to be nervous. If the timing was off, things could go dangerously wrong. But thanks to careful execution and optical enhancements in post-production, the final result was flawless. Decades later, the scene remains one of the most memorable and suspenseful moments in Bond history. One of the most unforgettable images in Goldfinger is Jill Masterson's lifeless body, completely covered in gold paint, a chilling punishment for betraying Auric Goldfinger. The scene was so striking that it sparked a bizarre urban legend, that actress Shirley Eaton had died from skin suffocation while filming. The myth stemmed from the film's own explanation of the character's death. Bond states that covering the entire body in paint prevents the skin from breathing, leading to suffocation. While this made for dramatic storytelling, it wasn't scientifically accurate. In reality, humans breathe through their lungs, not their skin. Eaton herself debunked the rumor, confirming that she was perfectly fine during and after filming. To ensure safety, the production team left a small patch of skin unpainted and kept medical professionals on standby. Eaton continued acting throughout the 1960s and even embraced her Goldfinger fame, publishing an autobiography in 1999 titled Golden Girl. Despite being a complete fabrication, the gold paint myth remains one of the most enduring pieces of Bond-related trivia. Before Goldfinger, James Bond films had instrumental opening themes, but this installment changed everything. It was the first in the franchise to feature an original song performed by a well-known artist, Shirley Bassey. With her powerful, dramatic voice, she delivered a performance that would set the standard for Bond themes for decades to come. Composer John Barry crafted the song's bold, brassy arrangement, perfectly capturing the film's larger-than-life villain and high-stakes plot. However, not everyone was immediately impressed. Producer Harry Saltzman reportedly hated the song, telling Barry, "The only reason this is staying in the movie is because we don't have time to record another one." Despite Saltzman's skepticism, Goldfinger's theme became an instant classic. Bassey's commanding vocals and the song's dramatic flair made it one of the most recognizable Bond tracks of all time. It paved the way for other legendary Bond themes, proving that music could be just as essential to the franchise's identity as the gadgets, villains, and action sequences. Ian Fleming, the mastermind behind James Bond, was able to witness part of Goldfinger's production, but sadly, he never lived to see its monumental success. In early 1964, he visited the set while the crew was filming Sean Connery's Miami poolside scenes, ironically, shot at Pinewood Studios in England rather than Florida. At the time, Fleming was already in declining health, having suffered from heart problems exacerbated by years of heavy smoking and drinking. Despite his condition, he remained engaged with the film's development, eager to see how his most ambitious Bond novel would translate to the big screen. Unfortunately, just months before Goldfinger's release, Fleming passed away on August 13, 1964, at the age of 56. Had he lived a little longer, he would have seen Goldfinger become the film that truly catapulted Bond into a global phenomenon. It broke box office records, set new standards for the spy genre, and ensured that 007 would endure for generations. Though he didn't witness its triumph, Goldfinger stands as a lasting testament to Fleming's creation. While Dr. No and From Russia with Love had introduced James Bond to international audiences, it was Goldfinger that truly made him a superstar in America. This was the film that turned 007 into a household name, transforming the franchise from a successful spy series into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. The film's explosive action, larger-than-life villain, and Sean Connery's effortless charisma captivated American audiences like never before. Goldfinger racked up box office records at an unprecedented pace, earning over $50 million in North America alone, a staggering sum for the 1960s. In New York City, demand was so high that some theaters played the film around the clock, running 24-hour screenings to accommodate eager moviegoers. Its success wasn't just about ticket sales. Goldfinger set the blueprint for future Bond films, proving that the perfect mix of action, style, and spectacle could dominate the global market. From that moment on, James Bond wasn't just a British spy, he was a worldwide cinematic legend. Great stories often come from unexpected places, and Goldfinger was no exception. Ian Fleming's inspiration for the novel didn't come from espionage reports or military secrets, it came from a casual conversation at an English health spa. In 1956, while staying at Enton Hall, Fleming struck up a discussion with a gold broker. Intrigued by the complexities of the gold trade, he listened as the broker explained how wealth could be manipulated through hoarding and market control. The idea fascinated Fleming, planting the seed for what would become one of Bond's most famous adventures. 3 years later, Goldfinger was published, introducing Auric Goldfinger, a villain obsessed with amassing and controlling gold. Fleming took the real-world concept of financial manipulation and exaggerated it into a grandiose criminal scheme, complete with Fort Knox, nuclear threats, and, of course, James Bond's daring heroics. This real-life encounter proves that sometimes, the smallest conversations can lead to the biggest stories. And in Fleming's case, it resulted in one of the most iconic villains and plots in Bond history. When it came time to direct Goldfinger, many expected Terence Young, the man behind Dr. No and From Russia with Love, to return. However, Young ultimately stepped away, leaving the franchise's future in need of a fresh vision. Enter Guy Hamilton, a filmmaker who would leave an indelible mark on the Bond series. Hamilton had originally been considered to direct Dr. No, but it wasn't until Goldfinger that he got his chance. His approach to Bond was noticeably different from Young's. While the first two films were grounded in espionage and intrigue, Hamilton leaned into spectacle, sharpening Bond's wit, expanding the role of gadgets, and crafting larger-than-life villains who exuded personality. His direction turned Goldfinger into a stylish, fast-paced thrill ride, setting the template for the franchise's evolution. Hamilton's influence didn't stop there. He would go on to direct Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, and The Man with the Golden Gun, each time reinforcing the mix of action, humor, and extravagance that defined Bond for decades. Without his vision, 007 might have been a very different spy. Goldfinger wasn't just another Bond film, it was the moment that transformed the 007 franchise into a global powerhouse. With a box office haul that set records and unforgettable imagery, Goldfinger elevated Bond to a new level of cultural significance. Sean Connery's charm, coupled with the film's extravagant sets and daring plot, captivated audiences worldwide. The movie's success wasn't just financial, it created a blueprint that future Bond films would follow. From the high-tech gadgets to the larger-than-life villains, Goldfinger introduced elements that would become staples of the franchise. The Aston Martin DB5, equipped with an ejector seat and machine guns, became as iconic as Bond himself. Meanwhile, the unforgettable villain, Auric Goldfinger, set the standard for Bond's adversaries, ruthless, ambitious, and larger-than-life. Its influence extends beyond the Bond universe, shaping how spy films were made for decades. The film's visual style, pacing, and the interplay between humor and tension made it a model of modern filmmaking. To this day, Goldfinger remains one of the most beloved Bond films, an undeniable classic that continues to define what a great spy thriller should be. Decades later, Goldfinger remains one of the most iconic and influential James Bond films ever made. It introduced the world to some of the franchise's most legendary elements, from high-tech gadgets to unforgettable villains. Which fact surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more secrets from classic films.